Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 15, Text 27, Translation and Commentary by His Divine Grace C.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Desha Kalartha Yuktani Hrittapo Pashamani Cha Aranti Smaratas Chittam Govinda Vihitani Me. Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. Please read the Bhagavad. Yeah. And Bhagavad Gita is unique in as much as by solving Arjuna's problems, it also solved everyone else's problems. A universal panacea. Because Bhagavad Gita addresses the root of all our problems. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur summarized the whole matter in 2 lines. Jeev Krishna Das Evishvas Korleta or Dukana. We simply have to understand that we are jivas, we are eternal living beings, we are servants of Krishna, and no more problems. Arjuna was facing terrible problems before fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He was, as is said in English, between the devil and the deep blue sea. There must be a saying in Czech, there's a saying in every language. In every language there's something like that. One side there's one problem, and if you go the other side there's another problem. What do you say in your... What is it in Czech?
From mud to...
Mud to? Mud one side, water the other. The Bhagavatam gives a description of a man who's hanging off the edge of a cliff from the roots of a tree. And the root is not very strong. And even if he falls down, he'll die. And even if he can pull himself up, there's a tiger waiting for him. But meantime, there's a bee's nest in the tree, and there's honey dripping from it, and he's catching the honey and thinking, oh, this is wonderful, it tastes great. So that's the material situation. We have a drop into hell on one side, and a tiger to grab us on the other, and a few drops of honey, and so nice. So Arjuna was in a dilemma. If I fight, it's not good, because how can we fight with our gurus, our family members, gurus and family members, and leave the whole women populace unprotected? But if we don't fight, that's also not good, which is why we came here to fight, because Duryodhana is not the proper person to be on the throne, so he should be removed. So Arjuna was in a dilemma. Whatever I do, the result will not be good. So Krishna spoke in Bhagavad Gita and brought him to a platform of knowledge beyond material duality. And this knowledge is applicable to all persons in all times, in all places, in all circumstances. Arjuna was in an unusual circumstance. Sometimes it's misinterpreted, not within India, but by Western scholars, that what is this, a religious book? And Arjuna was good, he didn't want to fight and kill, but Krishna, in the name of religion, is telling him to fight and kill. So often that is interpreted to say, what kind of religion is this that's encouraging fighting? But actually all religions encourage fighting. Often the atheists say that the religion is the cause of all the wars, most of the wars. That actually it's not religion that's the cause of wars. You can say it's religion, materialistic religion, but it's not spiritual knowledge that causes wars. But it's material desires in the guise of religion. So So Arjuna was in a dilemma, and now again he's in a dilemma, afterwards. Because this material world, there's always dilemmas, one after the other. We think, I will come out of this situation, everything will be nice. If I can just make some adjustment to my present situation, then everything will be nice. But then, even we make everything nice, and then again some problem comes. This Bhakti Vidya Purna Maharaj several times told the story, something stuck in his mind, some TV program he watched. How many years ago, we don't know. I don't think he's watched any TV program. But he told the story, something he saw on TV of some criminal, he was being chased and then he was shot. And he woke up and found himself surrounded by beautiful women and who fulfilled all his desires. So then what things do people, he liked to go gambling. Every time he gambled he won. Whatever he wanted he got. And after a few days of this he said, oh, this is so boring. He said, I never thought heaven would be so boring. And then the punchline. The punchline is the thing which, the main line in the drama. And one of his beautiful women looks at him and says, who said this was heaven? So, even if everything did go as you wanted, you still wouldn't be content. Even if everything happened the way that we wanted, we still wouldn't be content. Satisfied. Because the nature of the jiva is to be happy only in the association of Krishna. Govinda. Govinda. Who's been to Tirupati? You're standing in the line and people call out, Govinda. Govinda. Who satisfies the senses? People go thinking, great faith, Govinda will satisfy my senses. And it seems to work because people are going more and more. About a year or two ago they made a computerized system for getting darshan. So that you don't have to stand in line for 20 hours or more. They give you a band and a number and then you have to come a particular time. This summer it was running up to 4 days. You register and come back 4 days later for darshan. Lots of people coming. When's that going to happen in Prague? Prague Pati. Radha Praha Ishwar. Prabhupada made in London. He installed the deities, gave them the name. So devotees might have been thinking, which names are going to give? Radha Govinda, Radha Madan Mohan. He gave the name Radha Landan Ishwar. I don't know if anyone asked him why. Maybe because the British were very much in the mood of being Ishwaras, as Prabhupada was raised in the British Empire, British India. So when he came to England, he said that, well, we were always told that the sun never sets on the British Empire. When I came to England, I found it never shines in England. Maybe just to make the point that Krishna's the controller here, and everywhere else, not the British. And of course the great rivals of the British, just on the other side of the English Channel, maybe the French call it the French Channel, I don't know. I was born in England, so they call it the English Channel. The French, they're also proud of their great civilization. As Prabhupada said in Paris, that France is famous for two things, wine and women. So Prabhupada also installed in Paris the Radha Parisishwar. He said, you're not the controllers either. Krishna's a controller here too. So Prabhupada said when he was installing the deities that Krishna has come to Paris to find a beautiful girl. That's Radha. She's more beautiful than all the French women put together. As Prabhupada was told in France that there's a saying that Napoleon is France and France is Napoleon. And Prabhupada said that, well, France is here, where's Napoleon? He's gone. Maybe he's one of those frogs that they like to eat. Nowadays they import him from Bangladesh. Some frog is happily croaking away in a field in Bangladesh and ends up giving pleasure to a Frenchman. So Arjuna's in a dilemma. The material world is a miserable place. There's always one dilemma after another. So he remembered, oh, I was in a dilemma before. Krishna helped me. He spoke that knowledge. Now again I'm in a dilemma. So let me remember that knowledge. Now that doesn't mean that Arjuna, remembering Bhagavad Gita, again he put on his armor and got his gundicha and looked for some people to fight with. Because he was intelligent enough to understand how to apply those instructions in completely different circumstances. So it is specious of person. Specious, you know what that means? It means that sounds like it's true, but it sounds like it could be true, but it's actually a flawed logic. It's something which sounds right, but it's wrong. Okay. So it's specious of people to say that Bhagavad Gita encourages wanton violence. Wanton means whimsical. You must have some words like that in Czech. If you look it up, it's a very useful word for philosophy. I'm sure all your highly intellectual Czechs have some similar word. So Arjuna understood how to apply these instructions in his present situation. And these instructions have been helping people ever since, and will continue to do so. For they can relieve the burning heart in all circumstances. So everyone in this material world has problems. In India it's quite common, it's fashionable for people to say, no problem. It is again a specious statement. Fallacious. But it's more, it's a fallacy appearing as a truth. But it's also gives the idea of doubtful. It looks good, but not quite sure. So Bhagavad Gita is that instruction which helps us in all circumstances. Because of these problems, our heart is burning. Samsara bisha anare divanishi ajale. Juraite na koinu upai. Narottam Das Thakur says that. In the blazing forest fire of material existence, it is burning my heart day and night, and I can't find any means of relief. There is no material means to relieve the forest fire of material existence. The only means is a spiritual means to come to a higher platform. Samsara dava nalalidha loka tranaya karanya ghana ghanadvam praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya vande guru shicharana arvindam. The spiritual master is glorified because he brings the rain from the ocean of mercy and rains it to extinguish the blazing fire of material existence. So the ocean of mercy is Krishna. And the Guru takes instructions from Krishna and showers it on the burning hearts. And by accepting those instructions, those with burning hearts can be relieved from all difficulties. Krishna is Govinda. He has many names. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, as well as Sanjay and Vyas, address Krishna by various names. Here's one name, Govinda. Now, Yotse eti Govinda. Arjuna tells Krishna, Govinda, I'm not going to fight. He declares, I'm not going to fight. Govinda means one who satisfies this, gives pleasure to the senses. So Arjuna thinks it's very reasonable to address Krishna as Govinda. I'm not going to fight, and that will satisfy my senses, so you should agree. But Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. Tells Arjuna, actually, you got it around the wrong way. You're supposed to satisfy my senses. And by satisfying my senses, Krishna's senses, then your senses become satisfied. What's another name connected with the senses that Krishna's called in Bhagavad Gita? Rishikesh. Some other names? There's so many. No, in Bhagavad Gita. Viparitani ka. Keshava. Anyone else? Think of some names? Madhusudana. Deva, Jagatpati. Krishna. Chanchalangi Mana. Krishna. In the last verse of Bhagavad Gita, Yogeshwar, so many names, but here, Krishna, Arjuna is remembering Krishna as Govinda. So, dissatisfied. Let Govinda, he will help. So, Prabhupada writes in the purport that the Bhagavad Gita gives solace from all kinds of mental agony and gives the way out of great entanglements. So, in this material world, there's always faced with so many difficulties. That which we expect to happen, which we think will be good, doesn't happen. All our plans go wrong. And that which we don't expect to happen, does happen. That's why they made some sin. What is there? There's Murphy's laws. If it can go wrong, it will. Hope for the best and expect the worst. But in Krishna consciousness, we hope for the best, and we know Krishna is helping us, and we'll get the best. And the best is to be dasanudasanudasanudas. This is, in material life, it's durashaya ye bahiratamanina. We're hoping for something which is impossible. We're always disappointed because we're always thinking, I will be the best. Just little adjustment and everything becomes nice. Little adjustment is, I will be the servant of the best. In this material world, someone may become a servant of the best, but he's always planning, how can I become the best? Just like that's described about Nawab Hussain Shah, who was the Gaureshwar, the king of Bengal, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had entered. He was from a very ordinary background, maybe orphan boy. And he was, somehow or other he got in the service of the Muslim ruler of the state, who, because he kind of adopted him as his son. So one time when, no, actually I'm getting mixed up here between two stories. Anyway, he was the servant of the previous ruler, and then one day he killed the previous ruler and he became the ruler. So he was serving him very nicely. Yes sir, no sir, whatever you say sir. One day stabbing you in the back sir, killing you sir. So even one who's in the top position, they're always afraid someone's going to take me down from it. In the modern age, they have all this management principles. Stephen Covey's, the 7 habits of highly successful people, and win-win and synergy and things like that. There's a few things they say, which are all good ideas, no doubt. But practically, you could say that, but everyone's out for themselves. And even if they do cooperate, it's only, they cooperate as long as their own interest is served. They cooperate thinking that by cooperating with others, my best interest is served. But only in Krishna consciousness can there be an actually non-envious situation. Because instead of everyone trying to make themselves great, they simply recognize Krishna is great, and I'm not great. But that not greatness is not a source of distress. But the devotee becomes great by accepting that I'm a servant. That's what the meaning of a devotee is. So practically all the instructions of Bhagavad Gita are summed up like that. That instead of trying to satisfy our own senses, we should try to satisfy Krishna's sense. But still they say, well, there are so many difficult situations in this material world. And it sounds nice in theory that we should satisfy Krishna, but this material world is extremely complex. Well, that's the nature of the material world. It's caused by an atmosphere of mutual envy and deceit, because people are pretending to be our friends because they want to get something from us. There's no real love. And because people engage in sinful activities, therefore reactions, terrible reactions occur. For months when I was living in India, I never saw a newspaper, but last few days I've been flying around and I've seen the newspapers. In the planes they give you newspapers, full of how Israel is smashing its way into Lebanon. It's bombing, killing, this, that. So that's the big news at the moment.
To jsou velké zprávy.
They're still doing the same thing in Iraq, but that's kind of boring. The news at the present time is that they're doing it in Israel. So, so we want peace. There should be peace in the world. Why are they going in and killing people? It's wrong. Yeah, it's wrong. And the Israelis say, well, if we don't go in and attack them, then they'll attack us. So this is the material world. And they think it's so horrible. It is horrible. But then they don't think that what horrible things they're all doing on Israeli side and Hezbollah side. That's the people the Israelis are fighting. Some Arabic army or whatever it is. They call it Hezbollah or something like that. Is that how it's pronounced? I don't know. I just read it in English. So, just like a few years ago, some people deliberately flew some planes into the big buildings, World Trade Center in America, and anyway, everyone knows, it was a famous event. People were shocked. They killed so many people for no reason. Of course, if we look in history, it's not that America has been innocent. At the end of the Second World War, when Germany was all but defeated, there was a massive firebombing of Dresden and completely wiped out the city with no military purpose whatsoever. They just killed tens of thousands of people. You didn't know that? Well, they don't. In the Western countries, they don't teach that. You learn it later on when you don't read the history books. So you may go thinking, why such meaningless violence? But it's going on every single day in the peaceful fields of rural America, far removed from the cities. There are big buildings which hardly anyone goes into. What am I talking about? CIA bases? Slaughterhouses. Far, far away, so people don't hear the screams of the animals. It causes killing animals causes them tremendous pain and suffering. So we may say that, well, killing people is wrong. We say, what? What's wrong? We were taught at school that life comes into being, it's just a combination of matter. So if you kill someone, so what? It's just, the matter changed from one form to another. Of course, that's not true, because life doesn't simply arise from matter. There's this hand of the Supreme Lord is there. But death, especially violent death, is horrible. It's so much pain. But somehow people don't think that the same pain is felt by animals when they're slaughtered. And that actions produce reactions. They don't link it in their minds that this inhuman slaughter of other human beings is it's a reaction to the inhuman slaughter of animals. So Bhagavad Gita teaches us to live in such a way that we don't cause pain to others as far as possible, because the nature of this material world is that it's painful. But not to unnecessarily inflict harm on others. But rather, sarva bhuta hite ratam, Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita. The devotee is always engaged in activities for the benefit of others. Bhagavad Gita was spoken before the battle of Kurukshetra, in which there were two parties from the same family who were preparing to fight. Samaveta yuyutsavaha. They were there, eager to fight. Gathered together, eager to fight. Aham nija paro veti ganana ladhucheta sam udara charitani tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam. One who is of small, narrow-mindedness, thinks, this is mine, I, me and mine, me and others, thinks in terms of me and others. One who is broad-minded, actually broad-minded, or who's open-minded, actually open-minded. They think of the whole, every living being is as good as my own family. So this consciousness is possible to bring about by understanding that Krishna, Aham Bija Pradapita, he is the seed-giving father of all living beings. People may ask, well, what's the Krishna conscious solution to the fighting between the Israeli army and the Hezbollah insurgents? What would you advise George Bush to do about Iraq? And what would you advise the Iraqi insurgents? Well, realistically speaking, George Bush isn't going to invite us to the White House for an agreement. And even if we gave our advice, it would be very difficult for people to accept it, because they're very much in the mood of violence. But the real solution is to come to a higher platform of consciousness, to try to make some adjustment by which the Israelis and the Palestinians or Arabs can both be satisfied. It's not possible. Because the Israeli thinks that we have some rights, this is our land, and Palestinians say, what are you talking about? It's our land, we were kicked off it. So as long as they both think like that, then there's no solution. But when we understand that it doesn't belong to the Israelis and it doesn't belong to the Palestinians, it all belongs to Krishna, then only we can have peace. When people are so much wrapped in this consciousness of hate, it's very difficult. What are you going to preach to anyone? It requires peacefulness, somewhat detached mentality to be able to, Sattva-gun, the mode of goodness, to be able to appreciate this higher instruction. That's why Prabhupada, he said that there'll be great wars. Prabhupada predicted that. And it's not really a matter of prediction, because the material world, especially in Kali Yuga, is just a history of wars anyway. The West, or much of the world, has not been at war for almost 60 years now. That's like the longest in recorded history. I'm not familiar with the history of the Czech area, but I'm sure there's plenty of fighting here. There was Austrian Empire, Ottoman Empire, and this, that, and the other. So the Russians from one, not the Russians. So if we look at the history of Europe, or even the history of India, or anywhere, it's just a history of fighting. That's all. War it's horrible, especially in the modern age. It used to be in the just like the Battle of Kurukshetra. They fix the time and the place, and certain people, the armies, they go and fight. But nowadays, war means you bomb the civilians. Total war. You cut off the supplies. So everyone's involved. So it's horrible. So Prabhupada said there will be war, and then the Buddhist will ask, what shall we do? How will we preach during the war? Prabhupada said, there won't be any preaching during the war. When there's war, there won't be any preaching. You sit and chant Hare Krishna. Of course, maybe if you're very enterprising, you could preach something in the war also. But we see that Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita before the war. During the war, when you're fighting a war, there's no time for, playing dominoes or something. It's really intense. One moment of inattention and you're finished. So now we have a somewhat peaceful situation in the world. The peace, of course, it's a superfluous peace, because it's not a very peaceful situation for animals. And internally no one's peaceful. Burning in the fire of discontent, looking for love, not finding it. The fire of material desire is being stoked more and more by the consumer society. So many advertisements that you should buy this, buy that. Making more and more desire, but the means to fulfill it is not there. And even you find that people, even rich people, they get all the things they want. Big house, big car, or 2 or 3 big cars. And then they just do what the poorest man in the street does, which is just get drunk anyway. So it's a really low class civilization. The top people in society, the best thing they can think of doing is going and getting drunk. Well, they have art museums and stuff, modern art and all this rubbish. I think I told that last time, that one artist in Manchester. He spread a canvas on the floor, got a bunch of paints out and let his child play for half an hour and sold it for £10,000. Because his name was on it. He just signed it at the end. Famous. Afterwards he saw it. Actually, that was my kids playing. Just see what a fool it was. And all the art critics are looking at it and saying, yes, well, I think you're expressing something very deep here. You can see the Picasso influence. Yeah, Picasso was childish also. So no real higher knowledge. Here we have the art of the six Goswamis of Vrindavan. Jagvat Turnamashesha Mandalapati Shrining Sada Tuchava. They gave up this aristocratic association. It's insignificant. Bhudvad Dina Ganesha Kokalaya Kopina Kantashrato. And they live very humbly with just gopin, loincloth, and kanta, some rag, whatever, patchwork quilt. That's exactly the word. But gopi bhava rasamrita dilahri kalola magnomahu. They were always diving and surfing in the ecstatic ocean of the gopis' love for Krishna. So this is high class. Quoting Bhakti Vidya Purna Swami, high class means that when you pass stool, you don't smear it all over your backside with paper. You walk out to the field, and then you carefully cleanse the different parts of the body with earth, which is highly antiseptic, by the way, and then take full bath. So the six Goswamis, they're all from very aristocratic backgrounds, but they took to the life of simplicity, renunciation, to become free from all the entanglements of society, high society life. Arjuna wanted to do something similar, but he was forbidden to by Krishna. You have a duty in society, something to do within society. You can't detach yourself from it physically. So Krishna taught Arjuna how to work in this world with detached consciousness. So the Bhagavad Gita gives us the direction how we can live in this difficult world and not be entangled. So that's good for all persons in all times and places and circumstances. And that's also very useful for us as we practice Krishna consciousness within this material world. Well, in one sense, we're not in the material world, we're in the spiritual world. If we're in the association of devotees, we're always talking about Krishna, chanting the names of Krishna, and in always being Krishna conscious. And we're in the spiritual world. But then Arjuna was the intimate friend of Krishna in Krishna's personal presence, and still had so many problems, because that's the nature of the material world. The first words I ever read of Prabhupada's books was that Vrindavan is such a wonderful place. In Vrindavan, Krishna is the cynosure of all eyes. The cynosure of all eyes. It's a saying. It means that everyone liked to look at Krishna. He was the object of everyone's attention. But the material world is so contaminated that even in Vrindavan, there were always disturbances from demons. So even in a society of devotees dedicated to serving Krishna, there will be disturbances. And it is naive to think that there won't be. Prabhupada himself wrote, don't expect utopia. He told Indrajumna Maharaj that as long as we're in this material world, there will always be so many difficulties. But when we go to the spiritual world, there are no more difficulties. So there will be difficulties. And even in a society for Krishna consciousness, we can expect there will be so many upheavals and downheavals and ups and downs and ins and outs. But if we remember Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita, then we can remain steady. As Balaram told Rukmini when her mind was very disturbed, she'd just been kidnapped by Krishna, and she was very happy for that. But the inevitable result was that her brother Rukmini, who she also was very much attached to, he wasn't happy at all. So Krishna, in response to Rukmini's attacking him, Krishna highly insulted Rukmini by giving him punk hairdo. The original punk.
Původní pankáč.
So Rukmini was disturbed. So Balaram chastised Krishna. He said, no, you shouldn't do that. He's your in-law. And he told Rukmini that you should take a philosophical view of life. Be satisfied on that path. That's very good advice. Because if we're emotionally involved with everything that goes on in this material world, then certainly we're going to be disappointed. So we should be emotionally involved with Krishna. And Krishna will never disappoint. So let us take Krishna's instructions and learn to live in this blazing fire of material existence. Let us learn to live in a detached manner so we don't get burnt, and take shelter of Krishna. Through his instructions, and by developing or reawakening our love for him, by chanting his beautiful names, and always remembering him, always praying to him, and make Krishna our husband, like Rukmini did. As Rukmini said, what's the use of marrying someone who's just some bag of bones? Krishna is the only real husband. Krishna is the only real father. Krishna is the only real friend. And anyone who's surrendered to Krishna as representatives of Krishna, they can also be good fathers, friends, mothers, sisters, wives, and so on. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Shri, Nitai, Navadvipa. Any question? No question. Everyone's problem is solved. Just have to remember Bhagavad gita and then that's it. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.